Well, welcome again to all of you here tonight. My name is Matt Lake, and on behalf of the Fresh Expressions team that is here this weekend, or this week, I'm just excited to have this chance to be with you. And you're going to learn a little bit more about myself and our team throughout the week, but just before I go any farther, one of the things I love in life, maybe I can be neutral here. I'm not Ohio State or Michigan or any of that, but I am Duke. So back in that, oh, gee whiz, all right, never mind, forget that. Never mind. I'll take that. But with that, I do love college basketball, and so some of you might be familiar with the late Jim Valvano. And one of the things he said was, "It's been a good day if you've had a chance to laugh, if you've had a chance to cry, or reflect deeply, and just have some chance to center and be in deep thought." And I just want to say thanks to Brian, to Tim, and to Jason. I feel grateful because already thanks to Brian, Tim, and Jason, I feel like we've had a chance already to have some laughter, some reflection, maybe even a few tears, and a chance just to be. So it's already been a good day and a good night. So to those three especially, thank you. With that, would you join with me in a word of prayer? Almighty God, this night, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing and acceptable in your sight, shaping us to new life in you. O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So for the next little while, what I'd like to do is invite you, if you feel however it works best for you, there are going to be some notes in the notebook that you received. Depending on who you are and how you're wired, you're welcome to follow along with those. I think we'll hit a lot of them, maybe not all of them. If you want to make notes, if you just want to set it aside and just listen, as has been mentioned a couple times already, just do what you need to do to come, to be present, to be refreshed. I also want to ask for your help a little bit here tonight and just offer some feedback. We're going to have a chance to interact with each other a little bit. My one request is this: I want lots of feedback. I'm just going to ask that nobody come up to me tonight or the rest of our time together and say, "Matt, bless your heart." All right? So if you can just avoid that, I'd be really grateful. Other than that, it's pretty fair game. All right? So with that, you're going to learn a little bit more about me as we share it together. But before we do anything else, just kind of as a centering here tonight, just wanted to ask for your feedback on this. And just one of the things that we're going to be talking about is throughout our time together is just sort of this orientation of what it means to be people of God, to be God's people in this time, and specifically to be God's people as the church, and obviously a room full of pastors. What does that mean for us here and now? And so just to kind of help us get our minds around that a little bit, I want to share from Matthew chapter 9. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. Oops. All right, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Just like to hear, and this again would be a chance to hear this a little bit from you, what sticks out to you just reading through that passage and hearing those words? And there's no wrong answers on this. I'm literally just asking what maybe sticks out to you a little bit as I go through that. Anybody give me a couple quick responses? Do you mind? Just call it out. Yeah, compassion. I was hoping somebody would say compassion. Like, very good. Like, that one's kind of obvious, absolutely. But what else? When you read through this, what else do you notice?
Laborers are few.
Laborers are few. Great. Well, there was a number here. Same one. Right. Laborers are few, so, there's a whole lot of opportunity out there, but there's not a whole lot of laborers working at it. Okay, what else?
We're to ask the Lord of the heart.
Absolutely. Ask. There's an active part on our part in asking God to be involved with that. Excellent. What else? Yeah.
They went.
Yeah, how about that? Right. Didn't just hear about it, they went into it. and connected. Great. What else?
The harvest is plentiful.
Yeah, like, isn't that interesting? The harvest is plentiful. There's a whole lot of opportunity out there. Good. In the back here.
There is a sheep without a shepherd.
There, say it one more time.
A sheep without a shepherd.
A sheep.
That's important.
Yep, a sheep without a shepherd. Good. How about one more?
His harvest.
There you go. It's his harvest. Good, good. So again, to kind of let that sink in a little bit as we're gathering here tonight, we're going to let that be a centering scripture for us throughout our time together here this evening. So keeping that in mind, one of the things I want to ask, and you've already started touching on it, what if we saw people with the same compassion that Jesus had, and what if we saw this as a time of opportunity rather than just a time of scarcity? There's lots for us to pull out there, but there are two things in particular I just want to ask us to think about. What if we had the same compassion as Jesus and those that we interacted with, and saw this as a time of opportunity rather than a time of scarcity? I want to share with you, unfortunately they couldn't come with me tonight. Jason said he couldn't bring his band. I didn't put my family in a box, but there they are. That is my family. And I wish that you could know them personally. And since I can't introduce them to you personally, I at least want you to see who they are. That's our son Josh there in the gray shirt. And Josh, in recent years, has really gotten into lifting, as you can see there. He right now is going to Penn College in the town that I live in, which is Williamsport, Pennsylvania. The only reason you might know Williamsport is because... Thank you. That's right. Little League World Series. So every year for about 2 weeks in the summer, we get all very excited at Williamsport as the world kind of comes to our doorstep. I can walk out my doorstep right now in less than 2 miles, be at the Little League fields. Josh is going to college for concrete science. And loves using his hands and is just loving and learning in that regard. That's myself, and then that's my wife, Jennifer. Jennifer is the executive director of a nonprofit she started and founded 5 years ago called Dwell, and it exists to support foster and adoptive families in their journeys and walking with them. And I'm really just so proud and grateful for her. That's our daughter, Alex, there, next in the yellow. She's a nursing major at Penn State. I trust that you won't hold that against her being from Penn State, but her birthday is on Thursday and she graduates May the 4th. And so we're really excited for her. And then it's our son, Zach, there on the end. Zach is our outgoing individual in the family. Rarely is a thought in his head that it's not out his mouth. Loves sports and all things. He keeps us laughing all the time. That's our crew. And I just want you to kind of keep them in mind. And again, since I couldn't bring them here with me, I want you to see a picture of them. And there we go. Also a little bit about us and my context. I just have these 3 pictures up because it kind of reflects who we are as a church. There's part of our church we gather on Sunday mornings in that building there you see on the bottom, but we also have groups that meet outside of the church setting. So for example, you can see a yard there. We're talking about that in a little bit. And we have online opportunities. And so again, that's just us in our setting. It's First Church in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Now, that's a little bit about me, just my context. I want you to have a little bit of a sense of who I am, and I'll try to get a sense more of who you are. But what I really want us to think about for a moment is the sense and the context that all of us find ourselves in right now. And so I want to invite you, and again, just ask for your help here. As you think about the last 50 years, this is a pretty obvious question, but when you think about it, what is different today in our world, in our culture, but maybe particularly in relation to ministry, different today than from 50 years ago? There's obviously lots of different dynamics. Can you just call a couple out for me so again we're on the same page here?
Speed of change.
Speed of change. Excellent. Great. I mean, it is changing all the time. 5 years might as well be 50 years ago. So great. Go ahead. Technology. That is a big one. No more need to be said on that. Other than to me, I'm just still amazed. If it happens halfway around the world, we can know literally in seconds, almost instantaneously. It's all in our pocket, on our phones, etc. Yeah, very good. Technology. What else? Bible literacy, right? Not nearly what it was. We can't assume that people have that anymore in any regard. Good. What else?
The position of the church.
Yeah, good. The position of the church. It used to be much more central. It's increasingly on the periphery in different ways. Good. Yeah.
And the transitory nature of the people we try to work with.
Absolutely. The transitory nature of the people we try to work with and do work with, always in flux. Yes. There's a little more. Get back here.
People's priorities.
Absolutely, yeah. People's priorities. there's a whole lot of things, and especially if we're talking about Sunday morning, there's a whole lot more opportunities than just church opportunities or services on Sunday morning. Yeah.
Build it and they will come.
Build it and they will come, right? I assume you're saying that's no longer the case. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Right, you just have to build it and know they were going to show up. Good, doctor.
The rise of the nuns.
There you go, the rise of the nuns. Exactly. How about one or two more? Yeah.
We are, for the first time in history, of the 5 living generations in the church.
There you go. 5 living generations in the church at the same time. How do you speak to those on the eldest end of that spectrum and those on the youngest at the same time? Great. How about one last one? Yeah.
The families are so much.
Yeah, family units and structures are so different than what they used to be. Very good. Now, keep that in mind. We could have that conversation much longer. Just want us to have an awareness of context. Here's what I want to do just to kind of give us an illustration. I want you to think about how they sold cars 50 years ago. I'm sorry, this is not working best. Here's an advertisement from, in this case, back in the 1960s to sell a Dodge. Can anyone tell, what do you think the focus is here, or one of the ways they're trying to get you to buy this car in, say, the 1960s or so? Can anyone kind of, what sticks out to you when you're looking at that as a way to try to sell this automobile? It's shiny, yeah, good.
The color is not gray.
All right, the color, it's not gray. What else? What was that?
Big.
Big, big, yeah.
Overdrive.
There's overdrive there, right? I'm struck by the fact that there's a nice picture on top, but then look at all the print underneath it. And if you were to read the fine print, you know what you would hear about? The transmission system, and the kind of brakes it has, and the fuel economy, and all of these things. They were trying to sell you the car by giving you as much good information as possible, and the more information you gave, the greater chance you would have of selling the car, all right? And lots of others did this. It's just one example. Now compare that to, here is a commercial from a few years ago, also designed to get you to buy a vehicle. And I just want you to compare the two and see how they're different.
Come on, we gotta get out of here. Must go faster.
Come on, we gotta get out of here. Must go faster.
I just did.
Would you like to take it for a test drive?
I just did.
Alright, so, just real quick, help me out again. How is it different how the car was sold in the 50s, 60s? What's that?
Emotion.
Emotion. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in the second one, absolutely. Where else?
Selling an experience. That's right.
Yeah, selling an experience. Very good.
No information.
No, yeah, right. So let's just stop there for a second. So we quickly recognize that for these cars, we're not focused on information anymore. It's the emotion of it, it's the experience of it, it's drawing them into it. Here's my question. When it comes to how we do church today, is the way that we do it more similar overall to the 1950s or 60s commercial or advertisement of the car, or the one from just the last few years? Because my guess would be we try very hard to put out good information. We might have our websites up to date. We might make it clear what times we meet for services. We might share what programs we do and expect that to work, as compared to what would it be like to offer the experience found in life to the full in Jesus Christ, and letting people experience all that comes with life in the fullness of the gospel. And that would just be a question that I would invite us to begin to wrestle with and really think about as we gather together here tonight and throughout our time together. I love this quote by Peter Drucker. He shared this a number of years ago. Every few hundred years throughout Western history, a sharp transformation has occurred. In a matter of decades, society altogether rearranged itself, its worldview, its basic values, its social and political structures, its arts, its key institutions. 50 years later, a new world exists, and the people born into that world cannot even imagine the world in which their grandparents lived and into which their own parents were born. Our age is such a period of transformation. I think that is spot on, except it's no longer 50 years. It can be 5 years. And in a pandemic world, it can be 5 months. That everything suddenly changes. And yet, we in the life of the church oftentimes don't pay attention to that changing context among us, and therefore don't change how we do things or how we respond. We live in such an age of transformation. And when we don't pay attention to what's happening around us, we know the results. I'm just going to go through this quickly because you know this. These are things familiar with us. The church as a whole has been in decline for a while. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belong to a church or synagogue or mosque. That was down 23% since 1999. 1 in 3 practicing Christians dropped out of church completely at the beginning of COVID-19. 1 out of 3. Looking at every single age group, each one of them has seen an increase. This was referenced earlier already, an increase in nuns. You can see all the age groups there, 18 to 29-year-olds, so it was a 12% increase. Go through them all. The one that always hits me when I look at that list, though, the 40 to 49-year-olds, which I wouldn't think about at first, a 19% increase in nuns. Increasingly disconnected, increasingly not part of a local church. Another one that we're going to show you here. Sorry. A gentleman named Will McBranding noticed that only 1% of churches in America then are growing by conversion. So not just Christians moving from one church to another, but actually people that didn't know the love of Christ coming to know the love of Christ and what that means in their life. And then we've got all these challenges with the pandemic and living into a post-pandemic world. And even though it's been 4 years now, there are still ripple effects with that. The average church has seen an average increase reopen at their attendance. For some, it was as low as 35% out. Many, it's more up than 75, 80%. But there's suddenly a group that are gone. And then in addition to that, there's a whole bunch more questions. Like, what do connections in a post-pandemic look like? What does discipleship in a post-pandemic world look like? What happens with that digital reality and in-person reality? How do we mix those together? And what does that mean for us? Like, there's a whole host of questions that we never had before. And so I can go through all of those numbers with you, and I just did, but because if you think about it, when we're talking about those percentages, we're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of lives. Actually, we're talking about millions of lives when you add all the numbers up together. But here's the thing that I want you to do tonight. For me, when I can listen to all those numbers, there's a part of me that's like, oh, that's too bad that there's so much decline. And I feel bad about it, and I don't like it, but those numbers are so big, I start to feel like there's nothing that I can do about it. Tonight, I want to invite you to get past those numbers, because every time we look at one of those numbers, what we're really talking about is the life of an individual. We're talking about somebody that you know. We are talking about somebody in your life that you have had the chance to interact with in some regard. We're talking about real people. These are your neighbors. These are your aunts, your nieces and nephews. These are your grandchildren. These are your sons and daughters. These are people that you love and you care about. And I share that with you because here are some people I really care about. And if the statistics I just shared are true, and they are, that means that in my own family, 1 of my 3 kids will not know the love and the grace of Jesus Christ that has changed my life and that I have given myself in love and in service to. And more likely than not, 2 out of my 3 kids, according to those statistics, are not going to know the transforming love of Jesus Christ that has changed my life and to which I've given my life in service to. And I don't know about you, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. And I hope and I pray that you are not okay with that too. Because your nieces and nephews, your friends, your sons, your daughters, that's who we're talking about. And that's partly why we're here tonight. That's part of what this weekend we hope is about, is for us to go to focus on our reality and ask God, what can we do about it? What do you have in store for us? How can we live into that? And so part of what I want to just invite you to think about here tonight, because when I look at that with my own kids, what it really does is it brings me back to a place of being reminded of my own first love. And why I even started down this road of ministry and what that looked like. And I don't know about you, but in light of a pandemic world and a post-pandemic world, and on top of all the other challenges of ministry, like there are days where I just feel beaten down and I start to forget that anchor that first drew me into ministry to begin with. And so before we go any farther here tonight, what I just want to do is just invite you to take just a moment and remember again your own first passion. Remember again what drew you into ministry. What drew you into this holy calling on your life? And just to sit there for a second. For some of us, maybe that was a long time ago. And maybe we have to clear away some cobwebs to even remember what that calling originally was like. Maybe for others, it's much more recent and much more new. But just dwell there for a moment. And remember again your first passion. When you were so excited, and there wasn't anything you wouldn't do so that your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your peers wouldn't also know that love that has transformed your life. That's so much more than information. It's experiencing the reality of the living God and the fullness of the gospel. And I just invite you tonight to reclaim that, to live into that, to experience that. Because if we don't begin there, we might as well stop there. Because like Brian said, at the end of the day, this is really not about a presentation of newsletter programs. It really is a heart condition out of which then everything else will flow. So yes, we're going to talk about information. We'll talk about things we can do. Before we do any of that, I just really want to encourage us to have our hearts centered in this way so that everything else that we do the rest of the weekend flows out of this moment. And that reconnection with God in your own life. And let me just say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for saying, Lord, here I am. Use me. Thank you. Because it's not always the easiest thing to do. So I just invite us to begin to reflect on that. And here's one of my questions that I just invite you throughout the weekend to be asking, or the week to ask. Lord, what would you have of me, or what would you have me do? Just that simple. What would you have me do? And I hope whatever God lays on your heart, you'd be willing to follow through and move in the direction that God is calling you to. So, Lord, what would you have me do? As we think about that, I'm going to invite us to keep moving here and be reminded of this reality. The harvest is ripe. There's so much opportunity out there for us. And I don't want us to lose that. It can be easy to get discouraged, but there's so much opportunity that we have that God has put before us. So don't forget that. And then, I'm sorry, can you move this is not moving for me. Just keep on going. There we go. Can I do the next one? A great opportunity. So all of that kind of sets the stage for this. This is ultimately, all that is laid out is really about what Fresh Expressions is about. Reclaiming that original passion, understanding that the harvest is ripe, and that God is giving us a tremendous opportunity to be able to move out. So the next one. So in terms of what is a fresh expression, go back to that slide for me. Fresh Expression is a form of church for our changing culture, established primarily for the benefit of people who are not yet members of any church. Let me say that again. A Fresh Expression is a form of church for our changing culture. So we've just been talking about how much it's been changing. Established primarily for the benefit of those who are not yet members of any church. In other words, the harvest out there. That's what we're seeking to do and seeking to live into. Next one. Jesus, not going to be surprised, Jesus is amazing at this. And we're going to discover how and why. Because one of the things that Jesus does so well is he has this amazing ability to pay attention to that changing context. So we hear in Matthew 16, some Pharisees and Sadducees were on him again, pressing him to prove himself to them. He told them, "You have a saying that goes, red at night, sailors delight, red sky at morning, sailors take warning. You find it easy enough to forecast the weather. Why can't you read the signs of the times?" One of the things that Fresh Expression is about is us reading in the context of where we are and what's happening, so that we can then respond appropriately. Next one. When we look at our context, here's one of the realities that we have. And I'm going to just kind of break this down for us a second. Because again, the harvest is ripe. Like there's a whole lot of opportunity out there. Currently, there's about 20% of the population that attends church regularly. These are all the people in our churches. And usually what we do is we spend a whole lot of effort on that just 20%, the ones who are already connected in church. However, there are another 20% who do not attend church, but they say they do. In my more cynical moments, I call them members, but only in my more cynical moments, like, forgive me. I would also say another 20% though said they would actually come to church if they were invited by a friend. They would, like they just need that invitation. And then there are 40%, roughly, who have no interest in church, and they're not going to walk into one on a Sunday morning. They're not going to come no matter what you do. Now, here's what's interesting. You go to the next slide. We spend so much time on that first 20%. However, look at this. What if we took seriously the 40%, and on top of that, the 20% who said they'd come if they were invited? Suddenly, that's 60% of the population that we have a chance to interact with and to go and connect with. That's an amazing opportunity. That is the harvest that is ripe. So if we go to the next one, I was looking at that. Jesus is, I like to call him the master semiotician. A semiotician is somebody who reads the signs of what's happening around them and makes some sense out of it. Jesus does this all the time. So think what Jesus does. In the Gospel of John, chapter 3, Jesus meets with a scholarly individual, theologian named Nicodemus. And they have this high scholarly conversation, deeply theological conversation, and Jesus basically speaks in a way that connects with Nicodemus, but it leaves Nicodemus scratching his head. Because Jesus says, in order to enter into my kingdom, you have to be born again. And Nicodemus is like right, he's trying to get his intelligent mind around this. And in that way, Jesus shares words of life in the gospel with him. You go to the very next chapter, in John chapter 3, Jesus meets a nameless woman at a well. We're never given her name. We're not given any indication she's ever had any education. And simply by saying he's thirsty, can you help me get a drink? They engage in conversation that leaves her running into town to tell others that she's found the Messiah. And she is filled with new life. Same message is shared, but in two very different contexts, and Jesus meets them on their turf and talks and shares in a way that connects the gospel with them, so that it's not just information, again, it's the experience. Jesus shares things like parables. That was a new form of communication to help people understand the gospel in ways they couldn't or hadn't understood it previously. Think about where Jesus did ministry. Do me a favor, just call a couple out. Where are all the places Jesus did ministry? Where? Mountainside, where else? People's homes, right? Where else? Yes? Synagogue, right. Where else?
Wilderness.
Mountainside, we said, yeah. Wilderness, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You got it. Think of all the different places Jesus did. So yes, sometimes at the official religious spaces, but also in homes, on mountainsides, on the sea, in all kinds of places. All the places that people did life. What would it look like for us to do the same thing? And remember this, throughout the ages, God's church has found a way, in the context in which it existed, to find a way to thrive. Maybe not by all of our standards, but it's always found a way to thrive. Today is no different. And so again, this is what Fresh Expression is about. And a lot of it is connecting in first, second, and third space places. So yes, connecting in churches on Sunday morning, but what would it look like to connect in our homes? What would it look like for us to connect at a work location, or at a hobby spot, a running group, a dog park, any of those kinds of things? What might that look like? What could the gospel in those kind of places being shared actually begin to look like? Next one. And don't forget this. Jesus himself moved into our neighborhood. The Word became flesh and blood and came to live among us. What's Jesus doing? He's moving onto our turf to be with us. Next one. One of the things that's really helpful to me when I think about Fresh Expressions in our churches together, and I hope this is helpful to you, There's different frameworks out there, but this is one of the most helpful ones to me. The APEST one, described in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. It says, the gifts he gave were that some of the apostles and some prophets, some evangelists, some shepherds, some teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until all of us come to the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to maturity, to the measure of the full stature of Christ. Now, what I want to invite you to think about here is that when you go through those 5 offices, apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher, roughly half of them would fall into the category of what I think many of us are familiar with, particularly on Sunday mornings. And this is really good. It's what I would call the formative or gathered side of who we are. So, teachers, shepherds, prophets. Teachers being those who share information, help us grow deeper study, Bible knowledge. That is a great thing. We think of pastoral shepherds. We take care of each other. The pastor meets us, especially in our time of need, and that is a good and great thing. But when we only do those things, we miss out on other elements for the gospel to happen in full. So right now, and again, this is not a bad thing at all. If we go to the next slide. Most of us probably experience what I would call the gathered side of church. And again, there's a picture of our church, one at the facility on Sunday morning. We gather there for the sermon, we do Bible studies here, we have different programs here. This is where we do children's ministries, where we have some youth ministry. We've got our programs that all occur. These are not bad things. But all of that requires coming onto our turf to be taught. It requires coming onto our turf to have shepherding for them. It requires coming onto our turf to have a prophetic word of any kind shared with them. And for a long time, this is how we were operating. And I'd love to stand here before all of you today and say, you know what? A number of years ago, I looked and I realized this wasn't working as well as I hoped. And so I, in my grand wisdom, went up on a mountaintop and said, God, what must we do? And God said, this is what I want you to do, and go put it into place. None of that happened. Here's what happened. We were doing these programs, and our church was really built on doing programs well. The better we did them, if we could do them better than our neighbors and other churches, we would grow. And that worked for a while. But in my time there, here's what I saw. We were working harder and harder to offer better and better programs, and we were getting fewer and fewer results. And you know what my reaction was, my anxiety? Work harder. Try harder. Do a better sermon. Do a better Bible study. Offer a better ministry program. And you know what happened? Things just kind of kept going like this. And I was getting desperate. I didn't know what to do. The world was changing. We were no longer a priority the way that we once were. Even if we did it really well, what do we do? And what happened for us is that it's really kind of a strange thing. There was a seminary student at the time that we had a connection with. And he came to me and he said, I'm doing a class in seminary on church planting. Could I do a study on your church? I was like, sure. What do we have to do? He's like, we didn't even have to pay this guy. Like, he just wanted to use us as an example. I was like, okay, sure. So he did this study and he did lots of listening with us and all kinds of things happened. But at the end of his study, he came back to us. And here was his grand kind of conclusion. He asked us one key question that for me was like, and that was, we're in a more rural area in central Pennsylvania. Williamsport is not totally rural, but it's surrounded. So it's not Chicago or anything like that. We don't have tons and tons and tons of people. But the question that he asked was this: what would it look like to reach, let's just say, 1,000 people instead of all in one location at one time? What would it look like to reach 1,000 people with 100 locations of 10 people in each one? Or, instead of reaching 100 people in one location at one time, like we try to do every Sunday morning, what would it look like to reach 10 groups of 10? You're still reaching 100. Or 100 groups of 10, you're still reaching 1,000, you're not doing it all at once. At the same time, it seems a lot. And I'm telling you, that was a catalyst moment for us to say, what would that look like? And so began for us the journey of Fresh Expressions. If we can go to the next slide here. It began to shift us from a formative, only gathered church to say, what does it mean for us to be a sent generative church. So to be a formative church means you're usually taking people who already know the faith, at least to a degree, and you're helping them go deeper, and that's great. But we tend to not be so good at reaching out and connecting with new people who don't know the faith. So what would it look like to be sent out and connect with people on their turf to help them grow into faith for the first time? And if you look in Scripture, that's what apostles do. That's what those with the gift of evangelism do. Sometimes even prophets do it. At least for us, we had lost that part of who we were over time. And maybe it's the same for you. And so if you back up there just 1 second, we started sending out, we found them and started sending out some of our apostles or those who are excited to share the good news. Now you go to the next one, thanks. And here's what happened. We had groups of 5, 10, 15, 20 meet in places like homes. And they started doing church there. You go to the next one. We had people that started meeting at the gym or gym area. This is a fit faith group that started to meet. Next one. We had people that meet. We have a pajama factory that's pretty, that had a lot of space in it. Monday night dinner opportunities where we could share in faith experiences over a meal. Next one. A yoga park experience or a yoga church experience. What did they focus on? They meditated on Scripture and on prayer during their time together. Next one. A swing dance group, which was, as the name implied, a chance to get together and swing dance and share faith opportunities in the midst of that. The next one. On Wednesday nights, we call it First Night. It's another dinner church experience in which we gather together. Next one. That's Charlene. She leads a nursing home, Fresh Expression, for us. Just this past Easter, she went and shared on Easter Sunday. There were 30 residents and staff who experienced Easter celebration with Charlene. Next one. Church on the Mountain. During COVID, at the peak of it, Church on the Mountain never had to stop. They met outside. They could meet the whole time. They never missed a beat. Notice anything with each one of these? None of them are in our church facility. None of them are in the established church space. Each one of them, unique context, but sharing the faith uniquely in each one. Next one. I want to stress in this, and one of the things we really have to wrestle with, this is not a competition. This is not a matter of saying, well, what we do on Sunday morning is better, or what we do on the mountain on Friday evening is better. No. They're not in competition with each other. They actually start to complement one another. If you go to the next slide here, the goal is that each one of them has different strengths to offer, and they complement each other in a helpful way. Next one. I like to think of it this way. To me, it's helpful to think of a DNA strand. Think of one of those strands as our gathered church side on our Sunday morning. The other one as a strand of our sent church side. They're both held together by Jesus. They're both held together in the love of Jesus. But it's the same church. Next one. The other image that I like to think about with this is a bridge. You need a holy tension between these two. So a bridge does not work if there's no tension. It just hangs down in the gully. You cannot cross. If there's too much tension, the bridge breaks and you cannot cross. When there's the right tension, and that tension is working right, a way is created where there was not a way before. To me, that's what happens with this gathered and sent focus. In the right tension, a way is created that wasn't created before. Next one. The easiest way for me to think about it, here's some strengths for each one. Remember, one is not bad. They're both really good. The gathered side of who we are, it brings a sense of stability. We do good discipleship programming. There's a comprehensiveness to what we do. It's very visible in the community. When you drive by it, you can see it. There's a centralization and an organization to it. We've got bank accounts and some staff, and it's all orderly, and that's great. But we need some other things happening as well. And our sent side is way more nimble. Like they can just start almost, just tomorrow, they can go out and start a new group if they need to. There's a stronger sense of evangelism of meeting people on their turf. There's a specialization here. We recognize it might be a small group, church on the mountain. That's okay. A gym group. That's okay. A nursing home group. That's okay. It doesn't have to be one group for everyone. Very niche kind of thing. So it gets into the crevices of our society, and it's way more decentralized. Do you know how helpful it is to have some decentralization mixed in when things are already in chaos with the pandemic? Like sometimes you need centralization, which is great, but it lets us change much more quickly on the fly as the context around us is changing. Because we're slowly getting a little bit more used to, hey, if we just need to quickly move this way, we can do that. Next one. I want to show you a quick video here. When we were trying to explain this to people in our setting, here's a video that we made and we showed them. And I just want to show it to you in the sense, in the hope that maybe this is helpful to you too. In our setting, we call this side of who we are the Acts Network. And so that's what Mitch is going to talk here is referencing when he talks about the Acts Network. It's the sent focus that we've been talking about. So let's go ahead and watch that together.
The Acts Network is one of our ways at First Church to intentionally create faith communities outside of the traditional walls that we have grown accustomed to worshiping in and doing ministry in. And so we intentionally work with leaders who are willing to go out into the community and build faith communities in their workplace, in their homes, anywhere that they really feel that they are able to potentially connect with those who are far away from the church or far away from God. As a community group matures, there are 5 aspects that are slowly incorporated in order for them to be called a worshiping community. One is prayer, another is communion, the message, discipleship, and giving. As these 5 elements are incorporated into a community of faith, they will be seen as a growth of First Church and a multiplying experience where believers and non-believers are able to worship in a unique setting. I'd say the greatest need that the Acts Network currently has are more leaders that are willing to step outside of their comfort zone, really to create different communities and to invite boldly people that are far away from their faith in their lives, to be doing that more. As we learn how to do that as a church, the gospel will be spread.
It's helped me to grow immensely because of the diversity of people.
I've experienced lots of opportunities for people to open up and talk about their struggles. That's something that helps us grow as a community and as friends.
Y'all gotta try this new church. This is great. You can enjoy yourself. You can talk about the Lord. You can give your experience and strength and hope to the ones around you.
The reality of North American church is that each year more and more churches are closing, and the percentage of believers here in America are becoming less and less. It's the responsibility of every Christian to find ways to present the gospel to the world around them, in whatever circle, whatever the network that they are a part of. And the Acts Network is one of the ways that we are, again, trying to intentionally engage culture with the gospel. And if the church is not willing to explore different ways to present Jesus to those who do not know him, then we are going to miss the opportunity to see lives changed from the inside out.
As you listen to Mitch kind of share that, go on to the next slide there. Sorry about that, was me. One of the things that's always striking me every time I listen to that, if you heard the one woman share, did you catch what she said? Y'all gotta try this new, did you hear it? Church. Now, to my knowledge, she has never stepped foot in our facility on Sunday morning. But there's no doubt in her mind that this is church when they meet there, as in our case, an Acts Network, in this sent orientation. And I share that because what we're talking about is not church light. It's not church JV. It's not church almost. Fresh expressions are designed to live into church, just different expressions of it. So keeping that in mind, here's a guy, he's got a problem. You know what the problem is. The bridge there, or the dockway, or whatever you want to call it, no longer reaches the water. The water has receded back. So his problem is getting the dock to connect to the water. He's only got a few options to make that happen. Can you just tell me out a second, what are some ways that he can get the water connected to the dock, or the dock connected to the water? What are some options he would have?
Make the dock longer.
Yeah, right. He could do a building program, right? Or a building project, and he could build onto the dock to get out there farther. Good. What else could he do? What's that? Add water. How could he add water?
Pray for rain.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He could pray for rain and like, Lord, please bring it closer. That's exactly right. But you can buy a boat. Very good. Yeah, very good. And again, these are the kind of things we do a lot of times too, right? Like if we don't see the people that we want, we can build the right thing, we can have the right program, we can pray God, just bring them, and we can do those things. And I'm not saying these things are bad. What we're talking about with Fresh Expressions, though, this kind of sent idea, is what we would call, using the analogy or metaphor of a floating dock. So that literally as the water goes in or comes out, or goes up or goes down, that floating dock can do what? Respond to the context in which it finds itself and respond appropriately to remain connected with it. This is how we do church a lot of times. I want to be really clear, this is not bad. But we seek to attract. What do we mean by that? We expect people to come from their turf onto ours. Now, one of the things I always find interesting for us in our churches, and we're as guilty of this as anyone, we tend to say things like, hey everybody, we love you. Come be with us. We're the most hospitable people ever. And then we say, we meet at 9 o'clock for this particular style of worship that we like and do it the way we like, but come on, it's all about you, like kind of thing, which really isn't true. So we do that. Second form is that we might do something what we call an engaged format. And this would be the idea that we'll meet people on their turf. We hope to build relationships, so they'll come and then join us on our turf. So in our situation, every summer we do a local mission experience in Williamsport. We serve people in their homes, literally serve them by fixing things, helping them, whatever might be broken, repairs, etc. As we get to know them, we make an invitation. And we say, hey, we meet on Sunday mornings. We'd love to see you there. And now that we've made a relationship connection on their turf, we hope they might come onto ours. And that's a good thing too. But that's still not what we're talking about Fresh Expressions. What we're talking about Fresh Expressions is this idea of incarnational. Again, Jesus came onto our turf, moved into our neighborhood. That's what we're trying to do here. Meet people where they are. On mountains, in nursing homes, at the gym, etc. And to get to connect with them there in natural ways. I have read this passage so many times in my life in Acts chapter 2. The second paragraph here it says, every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to the number daily those who were being saved. For so many years, all I read was they continued to meet together in the temple courts, and meet together with glad and praising God and enjoying. Yes, they met in the official religious space, and they met in homes. They met in spaces other than religious space. It says it right there. What would it look like for us to take that seriously? Hopefully get this audio to play. I want you to hear an example. This is a rugby experience that we've done with Fresh Expressions. Just listen to how they talk and the invitation they make. Now remember, this isn't geared maybe to you and I. This is to other rugby players. All right? Listen to how they do this.
Hey, Johnny! Yeah, hey, First Church. I'm here with Al Gagerton, and we're asking for your prayers today. We are starting a Rugby Acts Network group. People are starting to roll in. We just got done with our devotion, and we're looking forward to sharing the love of Jesus Christ with rugby players. Yeah. And so if you will please pray for us, and if you have any interest in checking out some rugby and joining in and seeing a church form on the rugby field, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah, and if you like hitting people and you love people and you love Jesus, then hop on down. We're trying to go every Friday for the next few weeks, and based off the interest we gauge, move forward, you know what I mean, and start hitting some other people and spread the love all across.
That's right. Loving people. That's right. All right. Praise God.
So that really happened with our folks, and it always makes me laugh when I hear that. But they developed, as they started to do that, a very deep community with each other. When we're talking about this sent orientation, a couple things to just keep in mind. We're trying to do it through things like listening, being in contextual relationship with each other, with an intentionality towards discipleship. We're doing it also to be a mature expression of church. Again, this is not like pretend church. This is not secondary church. Like, we really want to share the gospel let people experience the full power of the gospel and what that can look like in their life. So there's a missional component. It's that sent idea. As Jesus has sent me, he says, so I am sending you. That's true for us. Also, let it grow out of natural connections. Like, this is not any rocket science. I'm not asking you to be inauthentic to who you are. So if you love dogs, don't lead a cat group. Right? You probably know other dog lovers, so do something with them. If you love music, you may not want to lead a trail running one, right? Like, what are your passions? What are the things you love to do? Build out of that, out of relationship and friendship and stuff, those kinds of things. Right now, I can probably ask each one of you, who are people that your church and your community is not connecting with at all? I bet you can already start to think of groups of who they would be. But I bet I could also ask you, who might there be groups your church is serving, but you're not currently building any relationship with? You might be serving them, but these are people that you see, but you may not know their name or their situation or any of those kinds of things. What would it look like to start to engage them in a more relational way so that a fresh expression opportunity might be able to happen? All of this then is contextual. And again, Jesus moved in among us, he read the context and responded appropriately. One of the things I love about context, a while back they did a study with Harvard, and they studied 100 top leaders. And they tried to figure out what made these 100 top leaders great. And surprisingly, what they found, among the 100, it wasn't those with just the highest IQ. Being smart was helpful, but not all 100 had that. They also found it wasn't those with the greatest emotional intelligence. Again, you could do a lot of damage if you were not emotionally intelligent, but not all of them had that. The thing that every single one of the 100 had to be a great leader was a deep contextual ability, or contextual IQ, as it were. They could read and understand their context and respond appropriately. What would it look like for the church to regain that sense where we are? I love this quote by Mike Winier. He says, church no longer has the option, if it ever had, of relating to people as that they were all the same. Contextualizing the church is the attempt to be church in ways that are both faithful to Jesus and appropriate to the people that church serves. Churches will look different because they're engaging with different people. It is formational. Again, it's not just a gathering and we don't do anything. We seek to be formed in the image of Christ through prayer, scripture reflection, conversation, etc. And we really want to be church. Like, again, it's not just a random group. It's actually seeking to be church. Again, I love this quote. If church is what happens when people encounter the risen Jesus and they commit themselves to sustaining and deepening that encounter and their encounter with each other, there's plenty of theological room for diversity of rhythm and style. And this one, what of what we call church are we willing to give up to be church? For me, that one always makes me pause a little bit to really stop and think and consider what that may be. When you mix all these things together, then what begins to happen is you have this blended ecology. What I'm not asking you to do is stop what you're doing on Sunday. I'm not asking you to stop your gathered side of who you are. What I am inviting us to consider, though, is what would it look like for this form of fresh expression, this sentness, to be woven into who we are as disciples of Christ, and also who we are as church. Because when we do that, there's a grafting in and there's a new vitality that begins to emerge, a new infusion that lets us experience something new, something different. Tonight, I just want to invite you to think one more time, like, what might the Lord be calling you to do throughout our time here? As you're thinking about that, I just want to do this because I want to be sensitive to our time and wrap up our time here before too long. But I want to just kind of paint a picture and then we're going to pause. If you're wondering at all, like, how does this actually work? What does this actually begin to look like? Throughout our time together, Shannon especially is going to talk more about what discipleship in this direction looks like. It's not a program per se, but we follow a certain pattern. We seek to listen, we seek to love and serve, we seek to build community, we seek to live in discipleship, and from that, the idea of church begins to emerge. And I'm just going to pull that up here in a second. Let's get that. Just want to kind of end with this. Again, I'm not going to walk through all of these other than to say, here's practically in our situation how this worked. If you remember the one picture I showed you, I said there's a pajama factory in Williamsport. It was not, we didn't wake up one day and say, hey, that's a great place to go start something brand new. The way it worked was we noticed there was nothing happening in that part of our town. There were no vibrant churches, and here sat this empty building. And so some of our people went to that part of town and literally just started walking through the neighborhood, talking with people who lived there, and we sought to listen. We tried to understand what was happening. In that part of the neighborhood, there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of brokenness. We guessed that the number one need would be food insecurity. As we listened and had conversations with people in the community, we found out food insecurity was not the number one need. The number one need was finding community, because there were a lot of single people there. There were a lot of broken families there, and they desperately wanted some form of community. After listening about that, one of the ways we thought we could love them and serve them was on a weekly basis to start having a meal, so that we could come in and yes, we ate together, but more than that, we started to give them the opportunity on a weekly basis to gather with others in their community who they didn't know. The first night that we gathered, when we gathered in this space, John stood up and he said, hey everybody, I'm from First Church. I'd like to just open us in a word of prayer and then we're going to eat together. That was it. He didn't do a full devotion, he didn't do a mini message, nothing like that. But from moment one, the people in the community knew we were from a church. We prayed, so we weren't hiding from God, but then that was it. People knew. As they came in week after week after week, a shift began to happen. So if you were there every week and you saw Susie come in, the first you would just know Susie was the lady with the long brown hair. Susie with the long brown hair. Susie with the long brown hair. Hey, every week she comes in, isn't it cold this week? Isn't it hot this week? What do you know, very surface kind of level. But when you do that enough, things begin to happen. So Susie comes in one week, and you say, Susie, how are you doing? And instead of her talking about the weather, instead of her getting the normal fine, she breaks into tears. Susie, what's wrong? I just lost my grandfather. He was the most important person in my whole life. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, now Susie's just let you in. She's just let you into her community. And she trusts you. And then Susie looks at you and she says, have you ever lost someone that you loved? And you look at her and you say, I have. And then she looks at you in desperation and she says to you, how did you get through it? Well, now, she's just thrown the door wide open. And you can say, Susie, for me, not only did I have people come around me, but my faith is very important to me. And God gave me the strength and the peace I needed to get through. And Susie says, I want that too. Could you tell me more about that? And now you're moving into discipleship. And because she trusts you, you keep growing in that relationship. And she's open to walking in faith and exploring life in Jesus. Why? Because it's not just information. It's the experience of the living Lord. And so there's this progression from listening to loving and serving to building community to then exploring discipleship and then gathering on a regular basis in discipleship, out of which church emerges. It's those kinds of things that happen in this scenario. I showed you the picture when I went through a few minutes ago, the Fit Faith group. Remember the group at the gym? They were literally pumping weights. There's a gentleman in that named Mylan. Mylan got to know those guys, and they didn't just work out physically, they worked out spiritually. And Mylan had a lot of brokenness in his life. And he got to the place where he trusted those guys. And he got to the place through knowing them that he wanted to explore the God that they knew more. So he asked them one day, he said, I'm really interested in this God you serve. Tell me about it. And he got to the place he wanted to be baptized. I was prepared to go to the baptism and do the baptism at the gym. Because that's where his faith had become important to him. Instead, he said, when I was growing up, the gathered church hurt me deeply. I think if this is really about new life, then maybe I should be baptized in the very place I was once hurt. And so he came, and he was baptized among us. And forgive me, I'm just going to go through this really. Can you go to the end here? I just want to show you a picture of mine, because to me, if you can find the baptism picture, I just want to show you a picture of this. Because this is one of those game-changing moments for us. When our congregation saw this, they were like, oh, this is not church there is. This is not church JV or church light. Like, this is for real. And it was on one, this was one of those days when our church started to get it and said, we want to be a sent church. Milan infused new life into our gathered side. Our gathered side said, we want to invest in this and see how the gospel can be lived out and experienced with all. That's what this is about. So you're going to hear throughout our time together this weekend how we can live into it. The workshops you're going to be, we'll go into more nuts and bolts and those kinds of things. But I just want us tonight to start to ask again, Lord, what would you have of me during our time here? And it's in that heart cultivation out of which God will show us what this sentness will begin to look like. So as we can sit back tonight, let me close this in word.